everybody. It's Alida Hernandez, Rebooted Mindset. Of course, a Spanglish entertainment production. I feel like I'm small today. I have to go up from my name. Anyway, I'm happy to be here today. You know, I'm always bringing different guests on the show. So today, I'm actually bringing somebody who's going to really talk about real life and his testimony. Just talking about things that we go through in life that sometimes we're embarrassed or ashamed to talk about, right? But you know what? These are those things that we need to talk about because they'll help somebody out there right now today that might be struggling with something. And everybody has a story. So today we got DJ Rich's story. So let's bring him in. Let's get going. Woo!
Wow.
Hey, DJ Rich, how you doing today?
Oh my God. I was okay until now. I got a little,
It's just a conversation. We're just having a conversation. We're gonna take it out anyway the spirit leads us, and however it goes. As you got your
yes,
supporting
yes.
friends here. We got Felicia's here. Hey Felicia, thanks for being
Hi,
here. And
Felicia. Thank you.
we got Vicky. Hey Vicky.
Hey, Vicky. Hey, white chocolate.
We got Robert
Oh,
Williams.
Robert Williams. That's my friend
That's
for
nice. So
life.
it's nice. See, we have support. Oh, I already got Elizabeth Evelyn.
Oh, hey, that's my sister in church.
Oh, that's great. See all these people that support, and that's that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't have is that community, right? You need that
Right,
community.
right. Very important. Very important if you are to succeed in this process because for a lot of years, I don't know about, I'm going to talk about me. My purpose, is to touch somebody's spirit, somebody's heart, through my message. I believe that God brought me out of the gutter to go back to the gutter and pull somebody out of the gutter by being just being a vision of hope. Some people remember you. Like I come from a place where I come from a family of 5 kids.
Mhm.
Same mother and father, uh, and I'm the 4th child, and everybody has my father's name but me. So
Wow.
growing up already, not feeling a part of nothing,
Mm.
because siblings are cruel. They say, "Oh, you was adopted. You're not our brother." I have
Oh.
big lips. They used to here you go. They used to tease me. I had big lips. And so I never felt a part of nothing. So as a result of that, I started looking for love in all the wrong places because all I really wanted to do was to be loved, to feel a part of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as an early age, my father was an alcoholic. He worked Monday through Friday, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he drunk all day.
Wow.
And then he was very abusive. He used to beat up my mother. He used to beat us up. So I come from a very dysfunctional home, like many other people do.
Mm.
So as the 4th child, my mother was on welfare. It's funny, right? Because like I was telling the story about not having my father's name, right?
Right.
And today it don't mean nothing, right? But when I was growing up, it meant something because I didn't feel a part of a family, right?
Yeah.
So when and I had the opportunity to ask my mother and father why, right? And it's 2 different stories. It doesn't make a difference now. Like my mother said that if my father was to write his name on a birth certificate, I wouldn't have been eligible for welfare benefits, right? My father says that my mother's a liar, that she never told him that. At this point, it really doesn't make a difference. But it's funny how you get 2 different stories. So as a result of that, I gravitated to the streets, right? And I was the little kid that was on the staircase holding everybody's stash, right? And the drug dealers took care of me. They brought me the shoes that I come from the era where I used to put cardboards in my sneakers because my mother couldn't afford to buy us sneakers.
Mm.
I had holes, all my socks had holes in them. So Damn, I even got snot rolled. Damn, Alida, why you do this to me?
I didn't do nothing.
You know,
But I'll let you get there. So let me just say something. It takes a lot of courage to get on here. I see the love. I think your wife's on here, your son. They said, "Hey, Dad, Ruben." Everybody's out here supporting you,
me too.
and JC's back here in the background. He wants to say hi.
What's up, Rich? How you doing, man?
All
I'm
right, all
listening. I'm
right.
listening. I'm in the other end listening, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
drop by and say hello.
It's just
All right,
interesting when we're
thank you.
talking about when we start talking about the scars we have as a child, right? Doesn't matter how old you are now. Those scars come up like it happened yesterday. So
Well,
that's
yes, without a doubt.
right. That emotion is like I'm 5 years old again, and that's like
Right,
everything just
Wow.
rushes in.
I'll be listening.
right.
And I've learned through the course of doing these programs, of doing podcasts and interviewing people, that the more you talk about it like you do, it's like you release that trauma. Like you're
It's
finally,
healing.
it's healing. You're releasing it. It's like, toma, vete para allá. You know how they say that? Vete, vete
Right,
para
right, right,
allá.
right. Without a doubt. Yes. So that's my early childhood, and as a result of holding the drugs, I started selling drugs. And what
Mm,
happened is I became my best customer. I started using drugs, and in the drug game, when you're in the streets, everything, lottie dottie, anybody, everything goes, doesn't make a difference. You, me, anybody, So I was on the streets, and I became a drug addict. I spent, when a lot of people at 14 years old are preparing to go to high school, I was locked up in jail, and I was a big Puerto Rican
right.
kid, and the majority of the people in jail from my community was African American, and they were all Muslim. So I became Muslim just to feel a part of something, right? And so I started doing that. So I spent a lot of my youth going in and out of jails, you know, and at the age of 23, through God's grace and mercy, I surrendered and I went to a drug. I went to a detox for 3 days, and I
Three
haven't
days.
used drugs for 3 days, and I haven't used drugs since then. I've been clean since February 3rd, 1989. I have 36 years
Woo!
clean of
Woo!
uninterrupted drug
We got
use,
to do some clapping
alcohol.
here. We gotta get some clapping. That's the thing to do. That is not an easy thing to do.
And I don't get all the glory. All the glory goes to God, because He took a wrench like me, and even my favorite song is "Amazing Grace," because I
Yeah.
was blind,
Yeah.
but now I see. I was lost, but now I'm found. So
Hmm.
so so at the age of 22, I went to a drug program, and I didn't have a lifestyle. I had no social skills. All I knew how to do was the cops identified me as the Puerto Rican with the newspaper under my arms. And that's I always had the newspaper, Delilah, but never read it. But always had the newspaper under my arm, right? And I had to have the newspaper. I was to buy it every day, but never read it. And so at the age of like 22, I went to jail, and at that point, I was tired. I was tired of living that life, right?
Mm.
And I remember Vision of Hope. There was an alcoholic that worked in the building I lived in, and he's always get drunk, and he got himself together. And when I went to him, he sent me to a detox, and I've been clean ever since. And through that journey, I was 23 years old. I was a kid. I had no hope. I had no self-esteem. I had no visions. I had nothing. Because all I knew how to do was use drugs, live and use drugs. Hang out on the corner. I lived a 4-block radius. If you ever
Mm.
went on Roseville Avenue and 6th Avenue, you saw me. I was always there. And then I started. I'm a member of a 12-step fellowship. I started attending meetings. And I used to go to the meetings, and then I used to come back to the community because that's all I knew. I had no social skills. I had no playmates. All my people were drug addicts, and they told me that I had to find new playmates, new playgrounds, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't continue to hang out in the same place and try to change. And I
Uh,
didn't know what to do. But I took a risk and I did that, and then I was living a life, I had pending charges over me. So I had like that black cloud over me, right? And I went to jail. They gave me a 4-year sentence, right? And and to be honest, it was a relief for me, right? How can going to jail be a relief? Because I was starting to put closure on my past, right? And I needed to do this so that I can move forward. So when I went, I was like, thank you, Jesus, And I went to jail. I spent a year, a month, a week, and a day. I had a bad accident in jail. I had a 2-ton tractor flip over top of me. It busted my scrotum, my arm. The
Wow.
doctor told me I'm a miracle to be alive.
Wow.
So I had a bunch of surgeries. I'm just, and when I look at all of that, how can I say that I'm not in the care of God, right? Because a 2-ton tractor flip over top of me, I'm pinned underneath there, and the only thing that really my arm and my scrotum was messed up. So I got, I came home. I was on my wife's welfare account because I couldn't work. I couldn't do nothing.
Mm.
I was happy to have a pack of cigarettes and a bus card so I don't have no money, but I can get there and we can smoke and joke. you know, and I was making meetings, and slowly, I met some people, they helped me put a resume together, right? I got a job at a hospital as a janitor, right? And I was real proud, because I learned how to strip wax floors in jail. So I got a job as a janitor. And the hospital was shining. Everybody said, Rich must have did these floors, right? And I used to take pride in my job, right? I remember my first vacation. I got a week vacation. I didn't go nowhere, but I was off and I was being paid because my vacations was paid by the Department of Corrections. That's why I went on vacation. And they were long-term vacations, And in the jails, I didn't use drugs, but I was living for the moment for the gates, the bus to use drugs. I didn't make a long stay but short stay. I kept the days going and the nights coming. I went to bed at night and I woke up. That's one day less. So, I came out in the street. I got this job as a janitor. I took pride in, people. I'm a social butterfly. So I talked to everybody. Everybody knew me. I have a lot of compassion in my heart. I used to visit the sick people. I used to make coffee for them. I used to bring them the newspaper. I was sharing the love, right?
What? Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, I was going to ask you, what was your biggest challenge you think you faced when you got out of prison and getting back into society like a different person? Because now you're a different person now that you're coming out.
What was the biggest challenge? It's finding a job. Because in the application it says, have you ever been convicted? Right. And that was sometimes I would lie and say no, and then I get the job and then my record check come back and they fire me.
Right.
And then what I believe in my heart, that if it's something for you, can't nobody stop you.
Yeah.
And I remember putting down, yes, I was convicted. And I said, can we talk?
Right.
And the person that interviewed me, I said, yeah, I went to jail because I used drugs, but I've been clean a year, a certain amount, and I don't use drugs no more. And the person had some compassion and gave me a break, gave me an opportunity, right? And sometimes when you're honest, you get what you're supposed to get, and I got the job as a janitor, right? And listen to this story, right? I never worked, but I knew that I worked somewhere as a security guard for 2 years. And then I had a big gap because I was in jail. So I would put that I worked in that place for 20 years. Right? Because the job is going to come up. So I remember that the job, it came up and the lady said, but they said you only work. I said, I'm sorry. It must be a mistake on their part. She said, relax, Mr. Fontanez, you got the job.
Oh.
And I took job
the fear, the fear of the rejection again, because I think that's the biggest thing, right? That I think this is in society in general, not just you, but there's such a stigma when you go to jail. Okay, it could be because you stole $1,000 from the store, or it could be because you had a little bag of weed, or whatever it is, but now you're stigma with that, and it's really a problem because not everybody fits the same mold. It's not, everybody's not the
Right.
same. So
But society, and I don't have a problem sharing who I am. You know why? Because my past don't dictate who I am today.
that's right.
And like I always say, I didn't care who knew when I used drugs. So why would I care that that I'm trying to do something to improve the quality of my life? Come on now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I want to talk about some healing, and I want to talk about the little boy with no last name, right?
Hmm.
And who was yearning for the love of his father, right? And when I started shooting drugs, right, for some reason, my father was never there for me. He was a drunk abuser. But for some reason, I thought that the only person that could help me was my father.
Hmm.
And I went and I looked for my father, and I said, Papi, look, I'm shooting drugs now. And you know what he said? He said, you ain't nothing but a drug addict. Forget about you
Wow.
even have a father, you piece of crap, right? And that was great for me, because all it did was gave me more excuses to, I'll show you, I'll continue to hurt me, because that's what I know how to do, right? So I
Wow.
started using drugs, right? So when I got clean, right, my life got better. As a result of accident, I got some money. I bought a house. I had two beautiful boys. They were little. And for some reason, I wanted my father, right? And my mother told me, I went to a convention in Puerto Rico, right? And after that convention, the plan was to go look for my father. My mother said, uh, my mother said that if you go to Mocha and ask for the section of the Muniz, you'll find him. So we drove like 3 hours. We asking everybody, Alida, and nobody knew where he was at, right? And at that point, I was okay with not seeing him, because I made an effort to go look for him. We talk about in the program I belong to, talk about making amends, right? And sometimes when the amends are not, I made an effort to make the amends, so I was okay with me. And you know what? The very last person we saw, he said, "Oh yeah, I was with him last night. I know where he's at. Let's go." And guess what happened? Fear rose. I was like, "Oh my God,
Wow.
it's gonna happen, right?" And when we roll up, Alina, and I saw my father, right, all the anger, the resentment, all of that was just like magic. It said poof, right, and it was gone, right. And I saw my father, and I hugged him, and I embraced him, and I started building a relationship from that point. Not the alcoholic, not the dad that never was there, right? Because that's behind us. And I started building a relationship from that point, from that visit. And I struggled on Father's Day to buy him a card, right? Because he wasn't the great dad. He wasn't there. So I used to have to find the blank card and just say, Papi bendición,
Mm.
happy Father's Day, te quiero mucho. And I was sending. And I would go every year to that convention, and I would do a drive-by to see my father, right? Have lunch with him, and then we'd go to the 3, 4 towns over, visit my mother-in-law, and then we go back to San Juan, because I'm a city boy. I got to go back to the city.
Yeah.
And and one year, Alida, my father said, I have this big house here, right? He said, the basement is empty. Next time you come, if you want, you can stay with here. And just let us know when you leave, right? So me and my wife, it's a story, because my mother, I'm a mama's boy. My mother died uh, in December, and her birthday was Christmas Eve, and we buried her on Christmas Eve. So one of the things that I did was I always had, they say, my buddy say, son, he said,
Yeah.
if you're God's the son of God, you're the God of the world, you are the creator. Amen.
Uh-huh.
So
Once you change
I
your mindset,
started,
it's on. That's right. That's exactly what I say. Once you change your mindset, it's on. That's the key thing. Okay. God gives us the power and the hope, right? And the ability to do things stronger. But you got to change up this. You got to change how you think about things. And that's what you're going through. While you're telling your story, you're going through that. You're going through those changes, right? You're feeling the emotion of the pain, but then God has healed that pain. So in
amen,
turn, now
praise.
you brought love to your father, and he brought love to you now.
So listen to the story. So we made a commitment. We said we used to have like 30, 40 people in my house Christmas Eve. We had dinner, we had everything in my house because we were not only celebrating Christmas, we're celebrating my mother's birthday in her memory, right? So this year we told everybody, no Christmas in our house. We're going to Puerto Rico, right? And I didn't believe it was going to happen, Alida. I kept telling my father, Papi, I'm coming for Christmas, right? And we was prepared in case it did, because I didn't believe it was going to happen, right? So we flew to Puerto Rico, and I was supposed to go to my father's house, and I was scared. So I went to my mother's house and stayed 2 days. Now we got to go to my father's house because it's almost Christmas.
Right.
So in the meantime, we went shopping, and I brought a few things, right? And I brought a few things, right? And I said, Papi, I said, it's Christmas, right? I said, and I have a few gifts for you, right? And I went in the bag and I took a polo shirt out and I gave it to my father. I said, look, Papi. And he liked it. And I said, Papi, but yo tengo una igual. I have one just like it, right? And I want to take a picture with you, right? And when we took the picture, it was like little Richie and his dad taking a picture, right? But it gets better. So my father goes in his room and he comes out and he gives me this cologne, right? And look what the cologne says.
Forgive me.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes.
wow. Wow.
And I
Oh my
know,
God.
and I know that my father didn't go to the store to buy this to give it to me, right? And when I read it, I looked, I said, I get the message, God, right? So, so that's healing that happened. Like, let me tell you, if something was to happen to my father today, that man I hated, I will be on the first thing smoking to Puerto Rico. When I go see him and I leave him, he starts crying. He always says, I'm the only one that looks for him out of all his kids. So that is, that's evidence of God. And me and my father has a great relationship today. Uh, let me tell you that I told you, right? Because I don't only want to share brokenness, I want to share hope, right? So
Right.
this drug addict, ex-convict, janitor, right? Janitor, floor tech, right? I got somebody helped me put a resume together. I was telling that story, right? And I got the job, and somebody helped me put a resume together. And I started sending my resume out, right? Because they told me that I can be all I can be. I don't only have to be a janitor. There was a nurse that told me, oh, no, brother, you're not going to be a janitor all your life, right? And she encouraged me. I got my GED. I got my license, right? And I got a job as a supervisor, right? And when I got that job, I was like, oh, my God, can I keep this place clean, right? And I worked there for 2 years and they promoted me somewhere else. Then my self-esteem was getting better. I started feeling that I can do this, right? And I got a job at a big company and I worked at a hospital and I rose the ladder from a janitor to a supervisor to a manager to operation manager to guess what? To being the director of a department today. Wow. This drug addict, ex-convict, the director, So tell me that God is not awesome. That that God, you don't care where you come from, right? But if you surrender and do things different, the good things happen to you, man. I went to this job, Alida. Let me tell you, I didn't even look for the job. And and this is God again, how God has always been taking care of me. I was struggling at my current job. I had a boss. This is during COVID. I worked the whole pandemic, and it was getting ugly. Where I think he was trying to fire me, right? This guy came up to me and say, let him be anonymous, right? He came up to me and said, hey, Rich, I go to all these hospitals, and this hospital, they're looking for a director. And right away, I'm looking to disqualify myself a little because I don't feel that I can do that, right? And I'm like, why you come to me, man? I said, well, let me tell you, I've been to jail. I'm an ex-convict, He said, so what? Why are you telling me that? I said, because I don't want you to recommend me and then my jacket come back and they say, Alida, what are you recommending? A drug addict, a convict? Right? So I said, well, you know what? Put my name in it. He put my name. Everything happened right in this room where I'm sitting at, right? So I sent my resume. they called me the next day. They did a phone interview, and they said, "Do you have an updated resume?" I said, "I don't." I said, "But by the time you get to work tomorrow morning, it'll be in your mailbox." So I get on the phone and I like, "Alida, I need you to update my resume. I need you to put Claremont medical center. Send it to me. We all this we're doing, right?" And it goes, right. So then the recruiter, I go, look, I got these goosebumps, right? Right. So the recruiter calls me, right? And she interviews me, right? And she said, "Well, why are you looking for a job?" I said, "Well, technically, I'm not looking for a job because I got a job, but this is a lateral, this is a promotional position for me, and I'm really interested in the position." She said, "Okay." She said, "Can you meet with the CEO and the CNO, Chief Operating Officer, and the Chief Nursing Officer?" I said, "Okay." I said, "As long as it's in the morning because I work in the evening." She said, "Okay, it'll be in the morning." Now this is during COVID, Alida, right? And I was working from 3 to 11. So I would come home at 11. I would sit here. I put the game on. I'll have my chocolate cake, all those goodies, right? So now I'm like, I was like, "Oh my God, I got an interview, right?" I said, "I got to see if I have a suit that fits me. Do I got to go buy one or something, right?" Let me tell you, girl, I went in the closet and there was a suit, looked like I just went to the cleaners and brought it out, right?
Said, right.
So I get the suit and I said, "Oh shit, it fits, right? It fit me." And then I put the pants on it and I didn't have to suck it in. It said, "Boop." And I said, I said, "Wait a minute, guy, you're moving too fast for me, right?" So the guy that recommended me said, "Rich, they really love your resume." He said, "You really got to sell yourself." And I said, "Listen, man, I got my outfit ready. I'm ready. I look sharp." So the date for the interview come, Alida. My wife is in another hospital. She had surgery. So I get dressed and I go to the hospital. I'm very scared. I have the mask on, right? It's COVID, right? The guy take me to the boardroom, right? And the only time I sat in a room like that, Alida, was when I went to the parole board.
You're like,
hoping to get out of jail, right? Right. So I sit there and I'm looking around and I'm nervous. And then I go to the bathroom and I said, "God, you know how much I really like this job. I want this job, God. So please, whatever you do, God, let it be your will." So I'm being interviewed, right? And the CNO asked me a few questions. And then the CEO asked questions on my resume, right? And I answered them. And they said, "You got any questions?" And all I thought was the guy said, "You got to sell yourself," right? So I'm like, "Well, I know I do this, I do that, I know how to do this, I don't know how to do that." And then he said, "Relax." I said, "It's my mouth dry." So the CNOs went to get me a water, and the CEO told me, "Relax." I said, "Instead, I'm excited." He said, "No, just relax. You're gonna be fine." When I left there, I knew it was my job, right? Yeah. And it's on COVID. He escorted me all the way to the elevator, and he shook my hand.
Wow.
They weren't doing that in COVID. And then I had these round glasses that look like, I don't remember. They used to tease me, right? But he loved my glasses. He said, "I really love those glasses." Right? In any event, my wife was in a hospital maybe 3 miles away. By the time I got to the job there, no lie, there was a missed call from the hospital. And I was, "Oh my God, baby, they call me. What should I do?" She said, "Will you relax?" Just as I call them and they say, "How you doing, Mr. Fox?" And I'm good. She said, "How did the interview go?" I said, "I think it went pretty good." She said, "It went very well. They want to hire you." I said, I accept the job.
They didn't even tell how much yet.
She did the same thing. She said, "How are you going to accept something? I ain't tell you how much money." I said, "I'm sorry. I'm so excited." Then I start crying, right? And she said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm so sorry. I'm just a little emotional." And because I didn't feel
worthy.
I didn't, and then when I got there, all I was praying was, "God, just let me do 1 year. Let me stay here 1 year so that I can have 1 year direct on my resume." And through God's grace and mercy, this September will be there 4 years against all odds, right? And my boss loved me. I'm very transparent with him. He knows I'm a recovering drug addict. He knows my whole life story. He believed in me. I used to go in his office and cry, right? And he used to say, "Close the door." And then he started sharing his story. And he said, "Rich, I go through the same thing you do. Only the doctors tell my boss I don't leave the office." All that. He said, "So don't go nowhere." And I used to go there. I said, "I see why people." I come with a letter. He said, "Don't throw that paper away. You're not going nowhere." and he's my biggest cheerleader today. And I always tell him, I thank him. I said, Doc is a doctor. I report to the CEO. I said, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. And so God put me in people in my path, right? And let me tell you, that's the best boss I ever had.
And that's where you work there. You still work there now, right?
Yes. I'm not. As long as he's there, I'm staying. If he leaves, then I start looking. Right. So that's my journey at work. So let me tell you, right? I was raised Catholic. Right. I went to jail and became Muslim. Right. Then I became a total mess. Right. I found myself 25 years clean with a big void inside of me. Right. And the void wasn't that I wanted drugs, alcohol. I needed something in my life, right? And because I believed in the power of prayer, I believed there was a God. I believe all that. But I wanted to be able to identify this God. I wanted to be able to worship this God. I wanted to be able to build some type of relationship with him, right? And I started seeking. I started asking questions. I asked some of my friends, and I'm so grateful that God put the right people in my path, because nobody endorsed their religion on me. The Muslim said, look, because my name was Hassan. He said, well, Hassan, I have some information here for you, that might help you with your decision if you want it. Didn't say, come on, there's some information. Some people invited me to their church. I went to one church. And when I walked in, I was scared. Right? When I walked in, I felt safe. I was like, oh my God, right? I felt comfortable, right? And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to come for 3 months. And if in 3 months, I'm not coming back no more. I've been there almost 7 years, 8 years or something, right? And I became a part of the church. I got baptized. Then we go into church, right? And you know how every time you go to church, they give you handouts, right?
Right.
And then I get a handout, right? And it says, real men, real issue, small group, right? And I said, oh my God, baby, look at this. I'm a man and I got some issues. Say, yeah, you do got some issues. So I made a decision to go to that small group, right? And then when it was time to go, I was scared again, right? And I invited a friend of mine to go, and I went to that group, and I felt safe and I felt comfortable. And then then it hit me. I said, oh my God, because these were men of God just like me that had issues, whether it was lust, whether it was stealing, whether it was whatever, they were just like me. And they were talking about their issues and praying about their issues. And I said, wow. One day I was driving, because you can give me information and I won't absorb it. But one day when I'm driving or I'm in my car, it comes to me. And I said, oh my God, that's what you will be, Rich, if you turn your will and your life over to the care of God, right? You will be a man of God, working, praying, and working through your issues. I said, oh my God. I became a part of that group. I went to a small group. I became a leader of the group, and I got involved in the church, right? I told this story that I shared it to the board of my church, right? They had my picture on the screen crying, right? Because I'm a big crybaby. I guess you realize that, right? Sharing my brokenness, right? Because I always say that broken crayons still color, which means just because I'm broken, there's some brokenness inside of me, doesn't mean I'm not worthy, that I'm still a child of God, that he still loves me. But I have this stigma. What mommy used to say, si tú haces eso, Dios te va a castigar.
I know, it's terrible. Ugh.
If you do that, God is going to punish you, right? Today, I have a God that's loving and caring and forgiving. He accepts me just as I am. Just God say, come as you are. Just be you, And today I got the God in my life, right? And in my church, I'm a part of my church. I'm known in my church. Not that I'm an idol, but people know my name, which means I'm involved. I don't go to church. I'm a part of the church, right? And we usher, we give service, we do all of those things because that's what God wants me to do. I still am available. I went like a month ago, I went to a jail, right? I put
Mhm.
in a clearance. I wrote a clearance, right, for them to record check me, Alida, right, and to go visit this jail, right. And they told they I got clear, right, and I had to go to the orientation, right. So I go there, I have a suit on, right, and everything, and I'm sitting there waiting to go in. And every time the guard looked at me, I said, "Oh shit, he gonna come get me. They're gonna lock me up." Something came up, right? They didn't tell me so I can come to the orientation so they can lock me up, right? So I'm sitting there, and what I'm trying to say is that I still suffer from that same illness that tell me I'm not good enough, that you
Mhm.
still they're gonna get you and all. So I'm sitting there, and on the trauma and anxiety I did to myself, that when I went in and the door closed, I put my against the wall and I was waiting for them to cuff me, right? And what happens is we went through and I went through, I said, "Thank you, Jesus." It was a relief to walk out of the jail, right?
Mm.
And so God willing, most likely I'm going next Tuesday inside the jail to let them know you don't ever have to come back to jail. I sat in the same chair as you was. I suffered the same pain. I cried a lot in the cell alone, right? But I found a way out. Because I believe people need to hear this message. People need to know that just because you use drugs doesn't mean you're not worthy, and doesn't mean that that's who
Exactly.
you are. You know,
Exactly.
uh, so I'm just grateful for God's grace and mercy, right? Because if I would have got what I deserve, I shot drugs, I had unprotected sex, I did anything that comes with drug addiction. I'm a high candidate for any disease, HIV, what, and through God's grace and mercy, I don't have none of that. Right. So God was always covering me. And and,
Yeah.
and and I did a and I, and what happens, like I'm a DJ, as you can tell, right?
Right.
And a lot of times, if you listen to some of my music, I share my story through my music, right? Sometimes I'm doing my show, and next thing I know, I said, we're going to church, right? And I have the whole chat room praising God, praying and all of that, because I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say, I'm a Christian, right? I'm not ashamed to do that, right? So I listen to my music, I start praying, I don't care, and like I had a friend of mine's, right? Because God always says to be bold, right? To be bold, don't be afraid, right? And I had a
Right.
friend of mine's in my hospital. She was dying. She died, right? And I went to visit her, right? And she was scared and she was talking, and I felt her pain, right? But there's nothing I can do to her. And I said, you know what? I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you not to take your medicine, but what I can tell you is that God is waiting to hear from you.
Mhm.
In them lonely nights, in the dark, when you're sitting there scared whether you're gonna die, I said, start talking to him. And then, and I
Yeah.
always wanted to do this. And so I said, you know what, let's pray. I'm in my job. I grabbed her
Right.
hand and we started praying, and I didn't care who walked in and out, because that was what God told me to do. Pray for her right now in front of everybody. I don't care. Right now, this is the moment. And we prayed. And when she passed away, I felt relief, because at least I was able to pray to her and I lift her up to God.
Yeah.
Today so today I'm just, I always say I just want to be an ordinary guy. What is that, right? I just want to be a man of God. I want to be a man of integrity. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm definitely sure not where I used to be at, right?
Yeah.
I'm a lot better where I'm at. I tell my story, right? Let me tell you I always say when I speak at, the fellowship I go to, I
Mhm.
always share my brokenness, right? And I talk about the story about Humpty Dumpty, right? Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, right? That was me. I sat on the streets, drug addiction and all that, and I fell, right? And then Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, right? I was all over the place, right? I went to detox. I met a sponsor, somebody just like who can help me in this process, because it's important that you have somebody who believes in you, who
Yeah.
listens to you, who builds you up, who's encouraged you, who pour into you, who loves you, right? And I had that man in my life for 36 years. He's been in my life since day one. And he still pours into me. And I still see him, and he still have something that I want. I want to be just like him. I want to be a man of God. I want to be a man with integrity. I want to be all of that, right? And so he helped me. And then all the people in the fellowship helped me. And they helped put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? That's me. That's what you see. What you see now, you don't see Humpty Dumpty all over the place. What you see is a crackhead.
Cheers to you. Yes. You have to celebrate. You have to celebrate everything you've done because, see, it's like God gave you the strength. But again, I always tell people, and I think you realize it now too, we have to love ourselves. We have to love ourselves. And that's the problem. Most of the time we don't love ourselves and we abuse ourselves. I've done drugs too. That's a whole nother story. But I've been there, and I know that I know that I know that God saved me,
Amen.
because when I was at the end, when I was dragging and crawling on my knees to the altar going, this is it, you know, that's it. This is my last, like, I have nothing else. Like, you know what I mean? When you get to that point that you're just grabbing on, you're praying, you don't even know what you're doing. You're
Uh,
just going, I know you exist, but something, anybody help me, take me out of this. I'm
yes,
drowning, you know?
yes, yes. And so, and I believe that that's what God took me out, right? To be a vision of hope. I remember when I was working, right, as a janitor, right, the uniform, the uniform was khakis, right?
Right.
And back then,
Oh,
that's what prisoners wore, khakis, right?
right.
I'm working in a hospital, and this guy said, Hassan, he said, "What, you on work? You on work release?"
Oh no. Oh no. You're like,
I said,
I can laugh about it now.
"Yeah, man, like work release, nah, man." But what I'm saying is that at that moment, I became a vision of hope for him, because no, I'm not on work release. I work here. And what, and so, like, that's what I do. I look at my family, right? Same mother and father, all of us. We all have been drug addicts. At one time, my mother went
Mm,
on the bus. They used to call it the Joint Connection, right? And every week she was in a different jail, right?
wow.
And I look at my mother, right, and how I hurted my mother, man. My mother was humiliated. My mother was a chubby lady. She had big boobs, so she had the bra with the wire underneath her. Every time she went through the metal detective, it went off. So then she had to go to the side, and the correction officer had to check her boobs. She was humiliated. The things that she did to come visit us, right? She would carry these packages on the bus and when I got clean, man, the amends I made to my mother, right? I gave my mother a good 25, 20 years before she died, right? And the amends, because I hurt my mother over and over again, and there was nothing I could do to make the amends for her, right? But one of the things I used to do is I used to take my mother shopping
Mm.
every Saturday. I'd go get mommy, right? And my mother was like, she had the circular, and then we would go, in the beginning, we would go way out there and then come back this way. And then I said, espérate, mami, espérate, mami. Where are we going? I want to go here because the beans are cheaper. I want to go to Twin City because the rice. So what I started doing was we would go to the furthest and work our way back, right? Then we started having lunch, right? And then, what's so funny, right? When I used to take her home, right? She used to give me a little bag, right? And in the bag, there was a Malta, there was a little Debbie cake, there was these little things, right?
Mm.
And when I used to come home, my wife would say, "Oh, who gave you that? Your mommy?"
And you're like, yes.
I was like, "Yeah, my mother, you can't have none." But and so those are some of the things, And then when I used to DJ, I used to bring her with me. I used to bring my mother with me, right? And when my mother died, I had a DJ commitment, right? And it was around Christmas, and she would always go with me, right? And everybody thought I wasn't going to do the party, right? And they say, "You're gonna?" I said, "Absolutely, yes, I'm gonna do the party because that's what my mother would want me to do." I would hear my mother say, "Mijo, vive tu vida. Ya yo viví la mía," right? And I
Right.
went to that place and I played, and I would look in the corner where my mother would sit and the tears would flow, but that was all part of the grieving. I had to do that.
Yeah.
So today, man, that's my angel. I miss my mother. I'm a mama's boy. Her pictures in the back there, right? And I'm just so grateful that God spared me. I even wrote a house music song. It's called Amazing Grace, right? And it talks about I was
Yeah.
blind, but now I see. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and because that's what I did, because all I ever wanted to do was be loved. I don't know about you. I settled for sex when all I really wanted was a hug. I didn't want sex. I just wanted you to embrace me. But I didn't know how to ask for that, right? So I settled for sex, and it was like, okay, I still feel when I just wanted you to embrace me and hold me and tell me it's gonna be all right, right? Because never, I never had that, man. In recovery, I used to leave mama, I said, Mami bendición, you know, and towards the end of the end of the road of my mother,
Mm-hmm.
I used to do me, my wife, and nephew. My mother was very sick, and we decided to make a DNR, which means to not resuscitate her, right?
Right. Right.
So, because she had a heart problem, then her kidneys was going. So the doctor asked us what we want to do because we need to make this decision because if her lungs go, then they have to put her on a respiratory, right? On a respiratory
Right.
machine. So I told him, I said, you know what? I can't make that decision. I will have to talk to my siblings. So we decided to make a DNR, right? So me, my wife, and my nephew would stay the night shift with her, right, in the hospital, right? And I used to sit in a room, and I used to be so angry at God. I used to be talking with my sponsor, saying, "Sponsor, I don't know, I don't want to be here. Why God has to do this? I was so
Right.
angry, right? But I was still there with my mother, right? And I remember one of those lonely nights. I remember my mother calling my name, Richard, and I said, "¿Qué fue, mami?" And she never responded no more. But I felt in my heart that she knew that she wasn't alone, right? And I remember towards the end, Alida, right? We had a bad night, right? So I called my siblings. I said, listen, I said, I think today is the day that mommy said, I think today is the day. I said, I need to get here as soon as possible, right?
Right.
So we're there. Everybody's coming. The hospital let everybody in. All my friends coming. I mean, the love they gave me. So I'm telling my mother, I said, Mommy, it's okay. You can go. It's like 5 o'clock in the evening now. I've been up all night with her. And my brother said, you know what? Listen, man, you've been here all night. You got to be here tonight again, right? He said, won't you go home? We're all here. Go home, take a shower, all that, right? I lived like 5 minutes from the hospital. I took my clothes off. I put a coffee pot, and my nephew says, Uncle Richard, Grandma died, right?
Oh
And
wow.
I was so angry, right? Because I wanted to be there, right? And what I'm learning today is that she knew that I couldn't take that. So she was waiting for me to leave to
Leave.
let
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
And I went there and I was like, oh, because I used to always leave and I said, Mommy, me va a
Right.
esperar. She will move her toe or something, right? And I told her
Yeah.
that again. I said, Mommy, me va a esperar. So,
Yeah.
I'm saying, and what I want to talk about is that the seeds you sort, right, you reap, right? So throughout the years, I attended a lot of funerals, and I was sitting there, my brothers, like I'm the youngest boy, but like the oldest. Like any decisions that come through me. Not that I'm saying I'm the great aim, but I'm the most sound, you know. So we're talking, and I'm laying in my house, right? My mother has no insurance. It's Christmas Eve. My mother died. No, and it's like December 22nd. I have $700 that I have to buy some toys. The kids were little. For the kids, my wife had a little money. So I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to. So I'm laying in bed, and my godson's mother said, Compi, my condolences. What are you doing? I said, I'm laying in bed here trying to figure out how to go funeral shopping to find the cheapest funeral because we have no money and no insurance. And again,
Oh,
God showing up for me. She said, wait a minute. Her sister lived right next to the funeral parlor. She called her sister. The funeral parlor called me. Right from my house. I never left my house. And I said, well, I don't have no money. I said, the only problem I have a brother in prison. And if my brother want to come, then that would make when we would do the arrangements. If he don't want to come, the sooner the better we can do it. And my brother decided not to come. He said, I don't want to see her like that. I don't want to come shackled and all that. So we made the movement. Alida, I had no money. Right? And I dressed my brother up, right? Right. And I told my sister, I said, I want your assignment here is to dress your mother the way you want her to go, right? So I'm taking them shopping. We got the money, got them dressed. We go there, right? I have no money. Before that night was over, the funeral parlor was paid in full. you know, my brother, I was told my brother, I said, don't worry. I said, I don't know how, but God's going to take care of us, right? And some people knew me as Hassan, the drug addict, and they wouldn't give me the money, so they went up and paid. I'm telling you, when we left that night, the funeral was paid in full, and I never used my $700. And I was able to put a stone on my mother. So I know that God was always taking care of me, man. When I look at my life, I look at the situations that happened. How can I deny that I was always in the care of God? You know, so you know, when I look at all those things, man, I am so grateful to be alive. I'm
Yeah.
grateful to be clean. You know, I'm grateful today. You know, I have two boys. You know, and I have a son. He's on here. My son Ruben. You know, my
Yeah.
son was November 8th, 1989. Right. I got
Hmm.
clean February 3rd, 1989. That's 9 months. That's my baby. That's when I came back to life. You know, and I produced him.
And you got and we got blessed with a son. See?
And he
Yep.
never seen me get hot. He never seen me use.
That's
I left him as a little boy, and I got into another relationship with kids, right? And I know the hurt that he feels that I left him, that I don't love him, that I'm raising somebody else's. You know, all of those things. I understand that, right? And as a result of that, my son decided to, you know, to do some of the things. And I'm not talking about him. I'm not kicking his back. And I'm just saying that how sometimes neglected issues have babies, you know. And as a result, my son had to go through his process. And I would like to say this today that we have a pretty healthy relationship. You know, I can feel that he's almost like I did when I was looking. It's almost like deja vu, right?
right with
Like I
your
can
father.
feel, right. I can feel him looking for me. I can feel that he needs dad just to talk to support him. You know, so we've been hanging out. We went on a men's retreat. You know, we've been doing all of. And when I look at those are baby steps that we're taking into
Yeah.
mending and healing our relationship, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so you know, so when I look at that, you know, I look at God as just like, you know, that we always say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, which means that I
Yeah.
can't, much as I love my son, my kids, I cannot deny them their living pain. You know, they have to go to what they have to go to get to where they need to get to. You know, and all I can do is try to support my son and encourage him. And I always tell him, son, I've been where you was at. Look at me. I'm not better than you. You know, I made some choices, you know, and look where I'm at today, you know. So, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm a DJ. I'm gonna tell you that story, and then I'll probably be wrapping it up, right? Um, I always wanted to be a DJ, right? Because I love music, right? For me,
Right.
music is healing, right? If I have a bad day, I'll turn my equipment on and I'll play, but I'll have to record something because then I'm committed to playing an hour. If I just played, I play 2 or 3 hours. I don't want to do this no more, right? I play the music, right? And then I start crying. I raise my hands. I start praying. So as my mother was happy, always was music, dancing, and all that. And I always wanted to be a DJ, but the drug addiction robbed me from that, right?
Mm.
And I got clean. I have a good friend. He died. My mentor, my brother. He started DJing again, right? And I would go. Everybody's dancing, and I'm back there recording all his CDs, getting my archive ready. So, and I remember, right? I got enough money, and I was going to buy a little Mickey Mouse DJ set, like, you know, right? So I had the money to buy that, right? So I woke up with a plan. I had to get blood work because I had hepatitis C, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to get the blood work, and then I'm gonna go to the bank and I'm gonna go buy the equipment. Well, I went straight to the bank. And then they said, well, Mr. Fontanez, that check didn't clear. What do you mean the check didn't clear? No, no, no. I went home and I didn't go do no blood work. I went home and I was pounding like a baby. And my friend said, Rich, how much that shit cost? Because I'll let you borrow the money so you can get that, stop whining like a baby. So I got my little Mickey Mouse set, right? And my DJs, right? There's a group out of Philadelphia, a jazz group, right? There was some young kids, and their name was Pieces of a Dream Entertainment, right?
Oh.
And so I stole their name, and it became my DJ's Pieces of a Dream Entertainment because I was a childhood dream that as a result of getting my life together, I was able to make that a reality, right? And like today I can tell you that I have a nice DJ business. I'm well known. I do a lot of events, political events, social events, married, weddings, divorce, whatever. I do any event, right? No job is too big or too small for us, right? But that was a childhood dream. And because I got my life together, I was able to make that a reality, And sometimes I go DJ Alida and I pinch myself and I look and I say, wow, wow, this is mine, right? This is mine. And I'm not talking about no low, I'm talking about some high quality stuff.
Right.
And I look and the boom, boom, boom. And I say, yes, 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 that's mine, right? And I enjoy that, So as a result, I have a nice business, I've met a lot of people, I'm very sociable, I'm very loving, I'm caring, I'm a sensitive, I'm a crybaby, I'm all that's who I am. That's who I am. Right? What you see is what you get, right? I'm an emotional man. I'm in touch with my feelings. I'm not afraid to share my feelings. I cry. Sometimes I watch a movie and I'm crying.
I know. Please, some movies are so bad. I get like bawling, crying. Like I get so emotional. And JC will walk in and is like, "What's wrong with you?" I was watching a movie. I can't handle it. This is too much.
I was a certified basketball official in the state of New Jersey, right? So I used to referee games. And then I would see the little girls crying, right? And I would start crying. I was like, wow, because, you know what? My friend, she's on here, Luna Velez, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said, you ain't nothing but a rough puff cream puff.
Well, this is something that you're displaying that other men out there should take a listen to, in the sense of not that they've gone through what you've gone through, but just life in general. To be real, to be open with your emotions, to get it out, to let it out, get rid of it.
My friend used to always say that flowers need water to grow. Yeah, that's my partner who died. May rest in peace.
Yeah, DJ Sisto.
So flowers need water to grow. So we need to let our tears come out so that we can grow emotionally and spiritually, So, so that's me in a nutshell. I always say, because I still, even not as much as I used to, I go to places and I have that prison look like that.
I don't think that when I met you. I didn't think that when I met you.
Right, not as much. Sometimes I do that. And what happens is what I really want is what I always wanted was for you to love me, but I didn't know how to ask you to love me. So I was afraid to let you know who I was. So what I did is I put that look so you'll stay where you're at. What I really wanted was for you to get to know me. I wanted you to embrace me. I wanted to let you know that it's going to be all right. But I'm so used to being locked and loaded in my head that I was like, don't mess with me. I'm okay. How you doing? I'm okay. In reality, I messed up, right? So that don't ask me how I'm doing okay, because I'm going to tell you, right? Well, I ain't doing, because I don't have no problem. So I have some men in my life, men in my life that have been in my life for years. I have a friend of mine. We were childhood buddies. We went to jail together when we was 14. We used to get high under my mother's window. My mother used to throw water at us. She used to come out with the broom and beat us because he used to get high and we always fought. Right? So today he has like 30 years clean, and he's like my brother, and I tell him, man, that it's an honor and a privilege to have been able to live 2 lives with you. 2 lives, because we lived the life of drug addiction together, and now we live in the life in recovery. We celebrate everything together. And I know, one of the biggest, if I can tell anybody, because remember I told you, I said, I'm not sharing for the person who's in the chat room. I'm sharing for the person who's going to accidentally bump into this video and listen to this 2 months, 3 months from now and get what they needed. And one of the things, I have men in my life that hold me accountable for who I am. That they don't sugarcoat that. You see, because I was raised by that. They say that it's a poor man. I only had one hole to go into. It's a poor, my father was a player. So I was a player, I was a womanizer. I caused a lot of harm to women. I prayed that I didn't have that I didn't make no girls because I wasn't, and I'm not proud of this. I wasn't nice to women, and I prayed that God didn't give me no girls, but I raised two girls. I raised granddaughters, and my granddaughters wouldn't sit on nobody's lap, because I would look at the damage I did to women, so and my wife Luna's in there, right? Luna was the first friend, right, that I was able to have, and I have sex with her because I had sex with all my friends. She taught me how to build a relationship with another woman. And we were so close that we would hang out. People would think we was having an affair. That's how close we was. We would laugh. We would go dancing. People would see us and they said, let's give them something to talk about. Right? We were there because her, but she taught me as a result of that, I know how to be a friend to women, and that's what it's all about is that each one teach one, I can't do this alone. I need people in my life. I need them more in my life today than I did yesterday. I got God in my life. I just want to be a ordinary guy. I just want to be. If I was to die today, I lived a great life. Because I didn't think I'd live to be 30 years old. The lifestyle I was living in, and this year I'm gonna be 60. I'm gonna be 60 years old.
Look at that! I just turned 60, so look like you made.
Right,
I didn't think I'd make it to 60 either.
Right, so God ain't finished with me yet.
No,
there's some other
right.
stuff. I don't know what it is, but I know there's some assignments that he had for me.
Yeah,
but he just want me to stay on the path. So I don't know, but I want to humbly thank you for this opportunity because it's it's an honor and a privilege. I always take that as an honor and a privilege when somebody invites me to do something because nobody never invited me nowhere. Because I got high and we fought. That's the kind of guy I was. I didn't know how. Every time I was always getting beat up because I thought I was a tough guy. So to be invited on this platform, that you bring, a lot of people, it was an honor that you saw something in me that I can give to somebody else, and I never, my sponsor told me years ago, if somebody asks you to share your story, say yes, because that's an opportunity that God is using you to share his word. Whether it's that you don't ever have to use drugs again, you don't ever have to go back to jail, that if you do something different, if you want something different, you got to do different things. You can't do the same thing and expect the same results. You want what I want, do what I do. All those things that I keep, if I don't pick up the first one, I won't have to worry about the third one. Because it's always the first one, right? If I have a problem walking down Roosevelt Avenue because I might see Julio, Flaco, Mustafa Salah, they say they don't go down 2 blocks and walk around. The little simple things. Oh, that's what you mean, So, so when you start having people that help you, because like, I'm going to tell you this, I go to church, right? But I know why I go to church, right? I go to church because I need help with my spirituality, right? I go to the 12-step program that I go to because I need people to help me with my thinking because I suffer from a disease that tell me it's okay. I always say this, Alida, I may not walk like I talk, but thank God I don't walk like I think because the things that run through my head some days are dangerous. I look at people, I say, look, look at him. He think he all that, right? I don't even know him. You know what I'm saying? You ever met somebody and you don't know them and say, I don't like her. Why you don't like her? I don't know. I just don't like her. I know why I don't like that person because that person might be doing something I wish I could do. Or that person looks so much like me. Or that person acts just like me that I can't stand it because I'm looking in the mirror.
You don't even know why. Yeah, but
Exactly.
again,
So,
we talked about it from the beginning. It's all about mindset, how you think about things. You have to adjust yourself, right? So you went from the life of prison and the environment that you went in. You had to separate yourself from that. And I think you're going to help a lot of people in prison. You say you go to prison and to talk to people. I think that is awesome. That's an awesome job to do because they need your help. They need somebody out there to say, wow, somebody actually gives a damn about me, right? Because that's the bottom line. Most of the people out there they have nobody.
right. So, and that's, you hear my baby?
Yeah. You don't want to hear
So,
all mine. There's not too many.
uh, and I believe that, and trust me, I don't get the glory of this. This is all God get the glory of all of this. I'm just a humble servant showing up for duty. Whether this was what he had assigned for me, next week he wants me to go to the jail. I can't pay enough for what God has given me, right? So, like, what I can't spend an hour or something going just to be a vision of hope to somebody. I can't share my brokenness with somebody and let them know that that broken crayon still color. So I am grateful and
I love that.
honored
I love
for
that.
the
Mhm.
opportunity to be able to share me, to share the real me with somebody. I don't want to
Yeah.
be, I'm not better than nobody. I'm just like, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
And
I'm
I
not,
tell you, when I met you at a press conference that we were at for an event in Orlando, and that was the only time I saw you there. Then I saw you the next day at the event, and that was it. We
yeah,
really didn't talk too much, and then
right,
we chatted a little bit on what's up, and I got a feel for you, and then I said, "You want to be on the show?" Like that, like, and I said to you that it was more a spiritual, more intuition. Like God said,
yes,
you need to talk to this guy. I didn't even know you. Like, I didn't know all the stuff that you've gone through, and then you shared some that when we talked, but I didn't know. It's just something that I needed to put you on the show. And that's those things that I meet people like that have stories. Everybody has a story. Like, I had a
eh,
story, and
right,
everybody has a story, and maybe our story will be close to somebody else's story, right? That they go,
yes,
wow,
yes,
I can get out of here, you
right.
know?
And sometimes somebody just need to know that they wasn't the only one that did that. Because sometimes we feel that we're so unique that we're the only one that did that. And when you hear
Right.
somebody else say, "Oh my God, him too," you don't feel inadequate no more, because that's the problem. We always feel inadequate. And when you hear somebody else did something what you did, you say, "Thank you, Jesus, I'm not the only crazy one."
Yeah. Well, look at this guy here, Oscar. He said, I met Rich when he came to the jail 33 years ago to share his story. 33 years ago. So you touched this person's life 33 years ago.
Yeah,
Amen to
that's
that. So see that.
that's a good
So
that's a
don't
good
think that
friend of mine,
your
Oscar.
story is worth it. Your story is worthy like everybody's story out there, because God's working through
Yes,
you, and you become
I-
a better person. And every day you
yes.
get better and better.
Yes, and God get the glory for all of this. It's nothing I'm doing. I trust me. When before we shared, I stand up and I said, God, just use me as you see fit. Share more of you and less of me, right? Because my story is my story, but God's
Mhm.
story is the glory. He gets all the honor and the glory. So I'm just a humble servant, Alida. And anything that you need from me I'm here. And whoever hears this later tomorrow, I'm ready, willing, and available. I
Mhm.
have no problem sharing my story anywhere, because that's what it's all about. It's about healing. It's not about glorifying the pain. It's to say that
No.
I found a way. I found a way out. That
Mhm.
just because you are suffering today. I always use quotes. One of my favorite quotes is like, "It cannot rain forever. The sun got to come out one day."
That's true. That's so
Huh?
true. It does.
Sometimes we get locked and loaded at this, and then the sun come out and say, "Oh, I think." So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, hold on, right? Don't
Yeah. Hold
quit
on.
before don't quit before the miracle happens.
That's right. Because you're able to do it. Yeah, we have the ability. Okay, is learning how to get that strength. Okay, from above and from others around you, from community. Because one thing you talked about
Right,
was a lot of community. So you
and that's
need a
what I was
good
going to share.
community.
Right, you need people. In the Bible say, "Iron sharpens iron," which means I need somebody like me. I need I can't hang around the block. I can't go to the bar and
No,
hang out. I don't drink. We don't have nothing in common. What's going to be the conversation?
exactly.
And like I went to tell you the story why I go to church because I want to get closer to God, right? But I go to my 12-step fellowship because I need help with the chipmunks, because I have the chipmunks on my shoulder. I got one that say, "Do it, Rich." They don't, and the ones, "Don't do it," and they're like, "Do it," and then, "Do it." No, sometimes that's why I say I may not walk like I talk, but thank God I don't walk like I think, because sometimes the chipmunks be going at it. And when I tell somebody I have this great idea, and then they say, "Rich, say it again. I want you to hear what you just said." You know, and then they say you're a damn fool if you think you can do that. And
Mm,
one of the things that's very important to have people that believe in you, that's non-judgmental, that
yes.
people that
Yes.
love you just for who you are, because everybody don't have their right state of heart for you, right? So, you have to find that community, that people that love you just like you, who was broken, who have found a way out, who are married, who can help you be a married man, who found a God of their understanding, that maybe if you practice this, you need people to, because it's about each one teach one, right?
Right.
So let me, we have a saying that we used to say years ago. They say, I place my hand in yours, and together we can do what I can't do alone.
That's true. That's why the word team, right?
Yes.
You need a team. You always have to have a team, a support system. That's why they have it at churches. You can go to Bible studies. You can have Sunday teachings. I used to do all that before. You can find other different circles. I have like a
Mm-hmm.
sisterhood circle again that's
Yes.
non-judgmental, non like
Amen.
they're if I call one of the ladies right now, one of my sisters, she'll go, "What's happening?" And I can just talk, and she'll be there for me. And sometimes that's all you need.
Sometimes if you talk long enough, you answer your own questions.
It's true.
So,
It's true. It's true. Well,
well,
I hope everybody on here liked DJ Rich testimony. Knows all your friends and family are here, so I appreciate all of you. I hope you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to YouTube, and that way you can see all the other episodes that I come on. I appreciate it. And you can like this video too and share it out. You can share it from YouTube, and you can send it out to other people out there that might want to listen to it. So
I just want to thank you so much, Alida. I'm honored. It was very
thank you.
rewarding for
Thank you
me.
for your for having the courage to be real. And that's the whole thing, is being real. And because that's what people out there want to see. They want to know, hey, I'm going through this situation right now. How can I get out of it? And there's always a way out of it. If you're a drug addict or alcoholic or any kind of substance abuse, it seems like you're never going to get out of it. Okay. And I
Right,
talk from experience that when you're in it, it becomes it's the drug takes over your body. Okay, it takes over your brain. So it's a physical thing besides emotional, because emotionally you're trying to numb out. You want to numb out. You don't want to feel a thing. You want to just, I'm good, nothing's wrong with me, I'm just going to keep moving, and as long as I keep putting some drugs in me, I don't feel anything, I'm good.
right, right.
The only one you're destroying is yourself. You're not destroying anybody else that you're angry at, only you.
That's the truth. So,
and
oh,
and from my experience and from your experience, you can get out of the hole that you dig yourself in, because you dig that hole that you're in right now.
right, right,
And
right,
some people, somebody reached out to me the other day, he's having some drug issues, so I pray for you, girl, and I hope that you get a good group of people around you, because you're in another state, to get out of that hole and just deal with your grief and not depend on drugs, anybody else out there.
right.
But
That's the truth.
so
So,
JR says, thank you,
uh,
Alida and Richard. Inspirational evening. Thank you, JR, for being
thank
here.
you,
Thank
thank
you
you.
to all your friends. Luna, thank you. Everybody's saying you were amazing. See, this
Uh,
is amazing. I'm proud of you. Look at that. Look at all that support you have. There's no I in team. That's right. All
yes,
right.
yes,
That's
yes,
right. Respect,
yes.
Richie Rich.
Thank you,
Rich.
thank you.
Look at that. Look at
Thank
it.
you,
Thank
thank
you for
you.
sharing, Rich. God bless always. So, see?
Uh,
Awesome. Here's another
we
one. Oscar. Awesome, Rich. I'm proud of you. Love you, bro.
love you.
Hey.
There, see
Hey, that's
that?
that. Everybody's on
Thank
here.
you, guys.
Everybody who's on here, be proud of yourself as well, because you probably
Yes,
have a journey as well that could be talked about, and you're here supporting your brother Richard. So that's awesome.
yes,
So,
yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
all right.
So,
Thank
so that was
you.
would the real Richard please stand up? All right.
All right.
Well, thank you
I
so
want
much.
to.
I really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. We'll talk soon. All right.
All right, man.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Hi, everybody. So, thanks so much for being here. It was an amazing night. I think everybody really was was pleased. And it's real talk. It's a lot of things that thank you, Vicky. It's not easy to get on a camera and talk about yourself and say your demons, and talk about things you've gone through. I've talked about some of it, but I haven't really gotten into the details with drugs. But when I was in my early 20s, I also had an issue, and I had another issue in another time in my life as well. And let me tell you that you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Good night, Maria. Thank you, JR. Thank you, Luna. Vicky, Griselli, Oscar. Thank you, everybody that's been on here. I just want to say, just to conclude with that, is that you might, if you're watching this and you're in that moment that you're stuck in something right now, reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody that that help you. It maybe be somebody in a church. I don't know, a priest, a pastor, a counselor, even somebody that's not in your current circle, right? You always have to go out of your circle because you don't want to be in the same circle which you're stuck in. If not, reach out to us here. You can send a message. I can get in touch with DJ Rich. You can talk to him. He has a whole bunch of other people too that can help out. So thank you, Oscar. Thank you. And good night, JR. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel. Share it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Share. We have a lot of other testimonies and other interviews that I have on my channel. You can check them out here if you're on Spanglish Entertainment, you can see them there. Also on my Rebooted Mindset 555, you'll have all of them. So there's 90. Today was 91, right? We had 91 episodes. Almost at my 100th episode. Let's see who's going to be on the 100th episode. But anyway, I'll see you next week. I got another interview coming up for next week regarding, it's called, it's regarding healthcare and children. So you'll need to see that one. It's going to be good. If you have children out there, you need to see that episode and see the changes in Medicare, Medicaid, and how you can work with that. Okay, especially in a city around you. And there's 3 locations here in Florida that will really help you. So thank you, Evelyn. Good night. Good night, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.